Welcome to Photos and Travel, a show that introduces you to fascinating places around the world. Please welcome our host and tour guide, Jonathan Van Bilsen.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Photos and Travel, where we bring the world to your doorstep. Today we're going to visit Amsterdam, known for its artistic heritage, elaborate canal system, and narrow houses with gabled facades which date back to the city's 17th century golden age. We'll also tour the Rijksmuseum and view works by Rembrandt and Vermeer. We'll begin to explore this historic city right after these messages.
Thinking apparel such as hats, shirts, jackets, and more? At PP Print, we can help with so much to offer. Just ask, we've got you covered. PP Print, where experience pays off.
Pet Value has a fleet of services to help you and your pet live your very best lives. Visit Pet Value Port Perry for all of your pet's needs. Pet Value, your pet, your store.
Today we're starting our adventure in Amsterdam, capital of the Netherlands. From there, we'll visit the cheese capital of Edam and then head to a traditional Dutch town of Volendam, followed by a visit to Zaanse Schans, full of old-fashioned windmills. We'll conclude our trek with a visit to Giethoorn, a village with canals instead of streets. I've been to Amsterdam several times, but each visit is like arriving for the first time. I met my guide, Els Kroon, who had planned the entire 4-day itinerary. Amsterdam is the capital of the Netherlands and has a population of 800,000, with a total of 18 million tourists every year. The local population is concerned about the damage and congestion in the core of the city, and they're trying to cut back the number of visitors each year. The city is the cultural capital of the Netherlands, and many large institutions have their headquarters here, including Philips, TomTom, and ING. Many tech companies have their European headquarters in Amsterdam, such as Uber, Netflix, and Tesla. This is Dam Square, the main town square in Amsterdam. Its notable buildings and frequent events make it one of the most well-known and important locations in the city and the country. An easy walk from Amsterdam Central Station is the 5-star Grand Hotel, located in the old shipping house. It was built in 1913 when 6 of Amsterdam's shipping companies decided to work under one roof and combine their strength to promote trade via the sea. In the 16th century, wooden buildings were raised and replaced with brick ones. Buildings are very recognizable with their stepped gable facades, which is the standard Dutch Renaissance style. As I mentioned, an overabundance of tourism, nearly 18 million annually, has had a very adverse effect on the city, causing an existential crisis. Hard as it is to believe, the city is in danger of crumbling into the water it was built upon. A major reconstruction project seems to be the only thing that can save it. Fortunately, the destruction which has taken place has not caused injuries, but if the millions of dollars worth of repairs are not attended to, it will only be a matter of time. The risk of continuing to postpone rebuilding of the groundwork will have devastating effects on the beautiful medieval infrastructure that makes Amsterdam such a popular destination. The popularity of cycling in Amsterdam is undoubtedly aided by the fact that the city is flat, compact, and densely populated, and of course the moderate climate. There are over 1 million bicycles in Amsterdam, which is more than the population of the city. Bicycles are used by most residents because of the convenience as well as the 400 kilometers of bike paths available. Driving a car is discouraged, with very expensive parking fees and many streets which are closed to cars or are one-way to motor vehicle traffic. Most journeys are of short duration and not too difficult to complete. Dutch people also tend to go helmet-free because they're protected by the cycle-centric rules of the roads and the way the infrastructure is designed. 36% of people list a bicycle as their most frequent mode of transport on a typical day, as opposed to the car, which is 45%, and public transport, which is 11%. Known as the City of Canals, the 165 waterways make up more than 100 kilometers or 62 miles of man-made canals, about 90 islands, and 1,300 bridges, which is 3 times as many as Venice. There are 3 main canals which were built in the 17th century during the Dutch Golden Age and form circular belts around the city. Construction began in 1613 and was completed 12 years later. Much planning was given to the canal system to ensure easy transportation, yet keeping lots of parkland. Construction continued across the city and the canal system was completed in the late 1600s. The first canals were dug for water management and defense, but as the city expanded in the Middle Ages, most canals ended up inside the city limits and lost their function. Instead, they became a main source of local transport of merchandise and people. This, the Maagrebrug, also known as the Skinny Bridge, is the most famous of all the bridges in Amsterdam. Approximately every 20 minutes the drawbridge opens to let boats pass through. The walls of Amsterdam, also built in the Middle Ages, were meant to defend the city against an attack. They were torn down in the 19th century, but remains can still be seen when cruising the canals. Today, tourism is one of the most important elements of the canals, and many tour boats filled with passengers give great views of this magnificent European city. The boats are constructed to easily navigate the turns and bends in the canals, as well as being able to fit under the lowest bridges. Many festivals take place on the canals, including this, the massive Pride event held annually. There are 2,500 houseboats which legally line Amsterdam's canals, and many have been afloat for more than a century. There are different types of houseboats, but the concrete kind are the most desirable, as they don't have to be taken into the shipyards for repairs. Amsterdam has laws about houseboats, and the wooden ones need to be repainted every 3 years. Most are residential, but visitors can find houseboat hotels, rentals, and even a houseboat museum if you just want to see what it's like on board. The colorful houseboats moored along the canal banks throughout the city offer all the comforts of a typical house and have become something of a local icon. The original houseboats are charmingly restored ships that hail from Amsterdam's seafaring and trading legacy. Many of these retain original features alongside modern amenities, such as electricity, heating, and running water. In the 1960s and 70s, an influx of more modern houseboats appeared as a solution to an increasing demand for housing. This type of houseboat is built on a floating pontoon and typically is not motorized. The houseboats in Amsterdam are permanently anchored to a specific address. A special permit entitles a houseboat owner to moor their home in a certain spot. These permits are in high demand, and, as with all properties, a prime location significantly increases the value of a houseboat. Luxuriously furnished houseboats, sometimes built over multiple floors and complete with adjoined terraces and gardens, can be seen all around Amsterdam's most picturesque canals. The world-famous Rijksmuseum was founded in The Hague in 1800 and moved to Amsterdam in 1808, where it was first located in the Royal Palace. In 2013, after a 10-year renovation, which cost €500 million, or $600 million, the main building was reopened by Queen Beatrix. The museum has 8,000 objects of art and history on display from their total collection of more than 1 million items, all collected between 1200 and 2020. Among them are masterpieces by Van Gogh, Vermeer, and Rembrandt, including his famous Night Watch. It is said, in an effort for him to earn more money, Rembrandt would paint the faces of prominent businessmen in his paintings for a substantial fee. The museum also houses thousands of rare books on art and many other subjects, all housed in beautiful library rooms. For family outings, the gardens to the Rijksmuseum are plentiful, and there are eateries to enjoy snacks or meals. Amsterdam quickly developed its own Renaissance architecture that lines quaint and quirky streets, straddling the city's grandest canals. Because the buildings were so narrow, and of course there were no lifts, the Dutch ingeniously developed a system of pulleys, whereby a rope was suspended from hooks at the top of buildings, and furniture and the like were hoisted up into the apartments. A popular canal boat cruise takes you along many crooked houses built for wealthy bankers and merchants, and did double duty as both houses and workspaces. The soil was so swampy that they had to be built on stilts, and that caused them to wobble and sink into the river, so now they're each a little bit off kilter. Here we see the tower of the Western Church, constructed in 1620. It is now a famous landmark owned by the city. Amsterdam is the only ancient city in the world where the medieval center is not a museum but a red light district. Already in the Middle Ages, drinking houses were established around the harbors of the city, and the first brothels were opened in the 15th century. The city's most photogenic micro-neighborhood, known to locals as the Negenstraat or the 9th Street, is bursting with specialty stores and cozy cafes. This is the Basilica of St. Nicholas, located in the old central district of Amsterdam. Built in the 1880s, it is the city's major Catholic church. Amsterdam Centraal is the largest railway station of the city and the major national railway hub. Used by more than 162,000 passengers every day, it is the second largest railway station in the country, next to Utrecht. Amsterdam is a fantastic city, and visiting it for a few days gives you an indication of what it's like, but it's not nearly enough time. Crossing the streets was difficult because of all the bicycles, but sitting in a cafe and watching people go about their business is a great pastime. The Dutch have certainly excelled at working with water, as we can see from the many canals. I thoroughly enjoyed my visit to the Rijksmuseum and was mesmerized by masterpieces created by Rembrandt, Vermeer, and Van Gogh, and many others from the Dutch Golden Age. I think I could have handled an entire day wandering the many halls of the stately building. After these messages, we'll venture out and explore the countryside around Amsterdam.
Don't feel like spending an hour in the grocery store? With PC Express, you don't have to. Simply download the app, choose your groceries, and the staff at Voss's Independent Grocer in Port Perry will have it ready for you to pick up. Come to Voss's, your independent grocer.
Welcome back. Amsterdam is a fantastic city and has so much to offer visitors and locals alike. Quite often when touring the Dutch capital, the surrounding area is missed by visitors, which is a shame as there is a great deal to see within a 20-kilometer radius. In this segment, we're going to visit Edam and try some of the world's best cheese, wander the streets of Volendam where souvenir hunting knows no bounds, and perhaps try some salted herrings. We'll also visit Zaanse Schans and see how a windmill works, and take a boat ride through Giethoorn, also known as Little Venice. The Kingdom of the Netherlands is sometimes mistakenly referred to as Holland. This country of 17 million is divided into 12 provinces, of which 2 are referred to as North and South Holland. North Americans, however, tend to refer to the entire country as Holland, probably because Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and The Hague are located in these provinces. I head out of the busy metropolis of Amsterdam into the Dutch countryside for my first stop, the Dutch town of Edam, known for its delicious cheese. The old town of Edam dates back to the 13th century, and the unstable ground has given most of the buildings a bit of a lean. Edam cheese is traditionally sold in round cylinders with a pale yellow interior and a coat of rind made of orange-red wax. Edam cheese travels well and does not spoil, it only hardens. Most young Edam cheese sold in stores has a very mild flavor, slightly salty or nutty, and almost no smell when compared to other cheeses. As the cheese ages, its flavor sharpens and it becomes firmer. Modern Edam is softer than other cheeses such as cheddar due to its low fat content. These qualities, among others, made it the world's most popular cheese between the 14th and 18th century, both at home and abroad, especially in the remote Dutch colonies of Indonesia. Cheeses are usually sold at markets through a bidding process. Quite often you'll come across a cheesemonger who is almost evangelical about their cheese and will corner you and give you quite an education on the Dutch national product. Edam does not only have a rich history in relation to cheese. As early as the 12th century, farmers and fishermen built shacks on the banks of the Ij River. This simple village evolved into the city of Edam, or Edam as it's now known, which continuously grew in prosperity until the late 17th century. In addition to cheese, shipbuilding and trade also contributed to Edam's development, making it one of the most important trading cities in the Netherlands. When visiting, you'll find pleasant shopping streets, welcoming terraces, and a stunning old inner city, complete with a giant church known as the Large Church. With its national monuments, beautiful historic facades, waterfront and cheese warehouses, Edam, with its population of 2,300, is one of the area's best kept secrets. My next stop in the Amsterdam area is the charming town of Volendam. Originally, Volendam was the location of the harbor of the nearby city of Edam, which was situated at the mouth of the Eye Bay. In 1357, the inhabitants of Edam dug a shorter canal to the Zuiderzee with its own separate harbor. This removed the need for the original harbor, which was then dammed and used for land reclamation. Farmers and local fishermen settled here, forming the new community of Volendam, which literally meant something like filled dam. Volendam is a popular tourist attraction in the Netherlands, well known for its old fishing boats and traditional clothing still worn by some residents. The women's costume of Volendam, with its high-pointed bonnet, is one of the most recognizable of Dutch traditional costumes and is often featured on tourist postcards and posters. There are fewer than 50 women now wearing these costumes as part of their daily lives, and most of them are elderly. A cafe fire on New Year's Eve in 2000 cast a shadow on this picturesque town when 200 people were injured and 14 young people died. Photographs of the deceased were placed on tombstones in the local cemetery. In the early part of the 20th century, Volendam became something of an artist retreat when both Picasso and Renoir spent a great deal of time here, enjoying some of the delicacies only found in this area. Traditional food found in Volendam consists of salted or pickled herring and smoked eel, a delicacy well worth trying. Eel, or paling as it is known in Dutch, has been so popular over the years that it has even started its own brand of music called paling sound. I'm glad I was able to visit Volendam and experience some true Dutch traditions, as well as top up my souvenir hunting and, of course, try a generous helping of smoked eel from a roadside vendor. I continued exploring the countryside around Amsterdam with a visit to Zaanse Schans, a small village famous for its traditional Dutch windmills. Zaanse Schans is a neighborhood near Amsterdam with famous windmills and historic greenhouses, which have been relocated here to create the look of an 18th century Dutch village. Historically, windmills in the Netherlands served many purposes, but the most important probably was pumping water from the lowlands back into the rivers beyond the dams so the land could be farmed. The crown at the top of the windmill can be turned to take advantage of the wind, and the sails in each blade can be extended to regulate the speed. Building plans from long ago were recently discovered in the area, and a group of craftsmen set out to recreate a windmill in the exact same style as the original. The end result was amazing and, not surprising, very efficient. The original plans called for a sawmill, and that is what they have rebuilt. From 1961 to 1974, old buildings from all over the area were relocated here and are all in perfect working order. A museum gives a great overview of how the Dutch used wind to make work easier for them. The Huisman windmill has been located on the Zaanse Schans since 1955. The mill was built in 1786 and has functioned as a snuff mill for milling tobacco, a mustard mill, and a sawmill. The mill is in the process of once again being restored as a mustard mill. Some of the windmills are dedicated to cutting wood planks used in the construction of houses, just as they were hundreds of years ago. There are 3 mills dedicated to making oil, but only one is fully functional. Its purpose is to press seeds such as linseed and rapeseed into vegetable oil. The most popular use for windmills was to grind flour and pump water, something the Dutch pioneered with great success. The Netherlands has a long history of reclamation of marshes and fenland, resulting in some 3,000 polders nationwide. My last visit in the Amsterdam area is Giethoorn, a small, unique town in the Dutch countryside. The area is beautiful with many old farms dotting the landscape. When you arrive at the town hall, you receive an overview of the layout of the village and make arrangements to rent a boat, in my case, with a pilot. The village of Giethoorn has a population of 2,700 and is often referred to as Little Venice or Venice of the Netherlands. In the old part of the village there are no roads, although a cycling path has been added. All traffic is done by water over the many canals of the town. Giethoorn was established through a process of the unearthing of peat from the ground. The town was rooted as a settlement of peat harvesters. The cutting of peat created ponds and lakes, and people built houses on the islands between them. As a result, access was only possible by bridges or using traditional Giethoorn boats or punters. They are narrow boats pushed along by a punteraar or punter. Surprisingly, tourism has had a relatively small influence on the old tradition of the town. The village is still only fully accessible by boat. Near the centuries-old thatch roof houses is a national park, which is a marshy area once popular for peat harvesting, but now is home to boaters and villagers. Fortunately, little has changed in Giethoorn. The tall wooden bridges are still there, all 170 of them, and you can still travel the waters on a punt as well as an electric boat. For the adventurers, one can also walk the town on a path. However, it is 15 kilometers long. Giethoorn has long been the scene of a Mennonite congregation that settled here in 1654. The population has remained the same in the last 60 years. Although there are a few houses for sale, be prepared to spend more than €1 million or close to $2 million, and that gives you 100 square meters or 1,000 square foot house. And that does not include the boat. And that concludes our visit to Amsterdam and some quaint towns and villages in the surrounding area. I was pleasantly surprised by the neatness and order of the city, as well as the charm and friendliness of its people. Seeing original windmills still in operation after 250 years was amazing, and tasting Dutch cheese was so delicious, not to mention the salted herrings and smoked eels. There is more to the Amsterdam area than the city itself, and I'm really glad I made the trek. For Photos and Travel, I'm Jonathan Van Bilsen. It's been my pleasure to be your tour guide today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. If you like this program, please click the subscribe button and you'll never miss an episode.
Want to know what's happening in Skugog? News and lifestyle, changes in business, and all the entertainment information you'll ever need. Plus, each edition has a new Photos and Travel article. Look for your next copy in your mailbox.
At thestandardnewspaper.ca, we try to show you the lighter side of our community workers and shed some light into their work in our community. With human interest stories on how the community gives back and reporting on legislation which affect us all, the Standard News is raising the standard in your community.